Our guest today is a global expert in emotional intelligence with over 40 years of experience. He provides training and coaching for leaders, focusing on emotional intelligence, positive psychology, and neuroscience. He has researched emotional resilience and developed a coaching methodology to support conversations that enhance personal and team resilience. He is the author of the Authority Guide to Emotional Resilience in Business. The subtitle is Strategies to Manage Stress and Weather Storms in the Workplace. I can't wait to learn a few things myself here today. Welcome to the Motivation Show, Robin Hills.
Eli, it's been great. It's great to be on your show. Thank you for inviting me. I'm highly motivated and ready to go.
All right. Well, my first question that begs is why are we all so stressed, Robin?
Well, I think the world is very, very complicated. Your listeners, going to be very familiar with the term VUCA, which comes from military vocabulary. It's very volatile. It's uncertain. It's complex, and there's a lot of ambiguity as to what the future is going to hold. And I think all of that leads to people feeling very anxious that they're not able to cope, particularly if things start happening around them that they've got no control over. And they feel that they are being led in a direction that they don't want to go in. I think the first trick really is to understand that you can't control the world around you. What you can do is you control the way in which you react to the world around you. And that slight change in mindset helps in terms of managing stress.
Well, yeah, I look at it as there could be 100 things a day that could theoretically annoy you if you let it, right? Because we all have got things that are happening to us. Some of it's very subtle, and some of us literally react 100 times a day. So it's about kind of managing that. So how do we do it? How do we, just not get things to get us crazy?
Well, I think one of the first things to do is to actually recognize what is it that drives you crazy. And one of the things that we cannot do without at the moment, no matter what I say, what you say, what anybody else says, is the fact that we can't do without social media and our devices. So most people are addicted to their phone. In actual fact, I use the phone a lot. I like to say I'm not addicted. I probably am on the phone flicking through social media far more than I should be.
Join the
And
club.
well, to compound issues, I've actually got a watch
Oh
that
boy.
links to my phone. And so every time something goes off on the phone, I get a haptic notification. Now, obviously, when I'm doing something, that's a distraction. It's a minor distraction, even if I ignore it. I know something has happened. And part of me is saying, ignore it, ignore it, ignore it, get on with what you're doing. And another part of me is saying, I wonder what that is. It might be a little bit more exciting than what I'm doing. Or it could be that call that I'm expecting from the bank or from my wife or whatever it might be. So I think the trick really is to take control of the way in which you actually interact with your devices. And that really is the first part in terms of helping you to cope with some of the challenges of the world around us. Get the devices to work for you rather than you working for the devices.
Well, that's well said. But as you know, Robin, the social media people are very clever. They're kind of like the casino people. You go to casino, right? And as soon as somebody wins around you, they have all the bells and the whistles. Similar to social media, we're kind of addicted to those little bells and whistles, and like we have to check it all the time to make sure, like when we get that little beep, there isn't something important. So we kind of get into this like a hamster wheel, right? So uh, not so easy. So any exercises that you would suggest that can help us to get off that hamster wheel?
Uh, yeah, very, very simple. Learn to switch your phone off.
There you go.
And go out for a walk. Go out for a walk without your device. I live kilometre and a half away from the scene you can see behind me. And I'm amazed as I walk around this beautiful reservoir through the woods, the number of people that I come across that are on their phone. I go out for a walk virtually every day, and the walk takes me 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour. I leave the phone at home. The world is not going to collapse because I haven't answered a telephone call, or I haven't responded to a tweet, or I haven't liked a Facebook comment, or whatever it is. So I think the thing to do is just to learn to switch the phone off. And the other thing to do, and again, it's very, very hard, take your devices and even your television out of the bedroom and have the bedroom there for one purpose, and that's to be in your bed and use the bed for what it's intended for, and that's for sleeping and perhaps other activities. But, the activities are not flicking on your phone, and the activities are not watching the television. Find somewhere else in your house to do that.
Yeah, all the sleep experts actually will tell you that's one of their top tips is, the bedroom is for sleeping, and keep out those flickering devices, and you'll have a much better sleep cycle. You'll get to sleep a lot quicker. So good advice. One of the things that I think most people are caught up in is this well-known phrase called keeping up with the Joneses, because we see the people around us and they've got a prettier house, they got a nicer car, and they seem to have it all. They post on social media. Of course, they're all sound bites, like you're on vacation and you're with Mickey Mouse, and all seems like, utopia. So how do we sort of cope with that, keeping up with the Joneses and feeling less than?
It's incredibly hard, particularly because those sound bites are incredibly positive. Hey, look at me. I am with Mickey Mouse. I'm in Florida. The sun's shining. I'm sitting in Manchester in the United Kingdom, and it's pouring with rain. And I've not had a particularly good day at work. So, it's a case of actually taking control of yourself and saying, hey, what's good in my life? And having a gratitude around that. And if you feel the need to, and I wouldn't encourage this, but if you feel the need to, post your own positive sound bites on social media, because there will be people looking at you and saying, oh, I wish I had that. And just recognize that there are going to be certain things that you've got that other people haven't got. What are they? And can you actually make the most of them without boasting and without bragging? And I think the other thing to bear in mind is, we don't know what's going on in the Joneses' life. They're presenting a facade. They're presenting an image. We don't know whether they're in debt. We don't know whether they've got a very poor relationship with their partner and their children. We don't know whether they've got major challenges. They're being sued by various people for various misdemeanors that they've done. We know nothing about them. A lot of people will reflect their own kind of social airs and graces onto the Joneses and think, wow, if I had that, everything would be amazing. Well, if you had that, then things might be different.
I'd have a few more headaches, having to
I
deal with
wouldn't use the word
boats
amazing.
and the 3 homes, and
And you've got to insure the boat.
Exactly.
You've got to insure the 3 homes. You've got to keep them and maintain them at a level which you bought them at. There are a whole host of things that we do not know about other people. All we can do is, we just have to look at ourselves and say, what is it that makes me happy? What is it that makes me contented? How can I get more of that? And I will stress, Lee, please edit that bit out. I will stress, Eli, that it is not flicking on social media.
Yeah, I get you. When I think of the word resilience, Robin, I think of kind of like being tough, like physically tough, but we're using a different kind of word, emotional resilience, which I like. And tell us what the difference between resilience, emotional resilience, and just coping.
Well, a lot of people seem to think that resilience is about coping, it's putting up with stuff. A lot of people will talk about bouncing back, which I think gives a false impression around what resilience is. For me, resilience is three components. It's having a focus on what it is that you want to do in life, what it is that you want to achieve, having an optimistic understanding of reality. There are going to be certain aspects of your world that you do not like. Let's be realistic about it. What is it that you can change? What is it that you can't change? Recognize that life has meaning and look at the purpose in your life and focus in on achieving that purpose. And then have the creativity and adaptability to work around the situation as it evolves. And coming through that will make you resilient because you're applying your emotions in an appropriate way to get to an end point that never ends. The other thing that people will say about resilience, and I mentioned it earlier, it is about bouncing back. It's not about bouncing. It's about being focused and dealing with life's challenges and recognize that this is an opportunity to learn and grow as you work through these challenges. And as you work through these challenges, you become a lot more emotionally resilient. So you're less likely to react in an emotional way that then causes you problems in the future.
So besides the focus, you feel there's other reasons why certain people have abundant emotional resilience and others have like so very little? Are there certain patterns that you recognize that people need to look at if they don't have a lot of that resilience?
Yes, I think people have just got to look at the way in which they're emotionally reacting to a whole variety of situations. A lot of people will automatically react to situations and they'll react in ways that they're comfortable with, or they're reacting in ways to try and take control of the situation to get the world to conform around them. So a lot of people will react with anger, and that's an immediate reaction that people will have to certain situations. Having the control to be able to say, okay, I'm feeling angry. What do I do in this situation? How do I use that drive, that energy to motivate me in a way to deal with the situation in a way that will be constructive and positive in terms of all of us?
So, Robin, do the same principles of emotional resilience that apply to business apply to emotional resilience outside of work? Because the first thought I have is like that person who's in the car, right? And somebody cuts them off, and right away they're getting all nuts, and they're going to chase this guy or give them the that they call the bird, the finger salute, and that gets you in trouble. That could change your whole life. That could get somebody in the car, to do something really nasty. That one moment of not standing back and reflecting can change everything. So talk about that sort of work versus life resilience.
Well, I think we just got to look at work as being part of life, and we just got to recognize what our emotional triggers are. So if we know that when we're out driving and we're late for an appointment and every traffic light that we have come across is on red and somebody cuts us up, we've just got to recognize that we are in an emotional state which is not conducive to making the best decisions. Very easy for you and I to talk about it, Eli, on your show, but very difficult in the heat of the moments. And this is all part of this emotional regulation I was talking about. How do you respond emotionally? The difficult thing, the incredibly difficult thing to do is to say, hey, off you go, have a good life. I'll just deal with this and just carry on. at a pace. I've got my own pressures. I've got my own issues to deal with. I'm late for work. Let's focus in on that. Let's get into work late and deal with the fact that I am late rather than getting so wound up that you arrive at work late. And the first thing you do is to snap at your colleague because they've come in with something that you think is not that important. Even worse if it's your manager, and even worse if it's an important client. So the important thing is to recognize that emotions will drive your behavior, and your behavior will have an impact on other people. What is that impact? Try to focus in on making that impact constructive rather than destructive.
So I want to stick on this topic for a little longer because I think it's just like this point is really, really so valid in terms of how this can really destroy things for you. Like your ego can help you lose friends because of this emotional outburst without thinking. And so is there, you feel, a way to discipline ourselves not to immediately react? Because if we can just like step aside for a moment, reflect on what the other person said rather than immediately react, changes the whole outcome. But that's so easier said than done because so many of us are just caught in that ego and we're just like, it's an outburst and we just can't control it. Talk to that a little bit.
Sure. I think we've just got to recognize that we are driven by that ego, that need to put ourselves and make ourselves appear to be in control and not to be abused or insulted or offended by anybody. I think the important thing to remember here, even if you don't remember it in the heat of the moment, is that you've got choices. And there is a split second between the stimulus and your reaction. In that space, you've got the opportunity to choose. Remember, it is your choice, and it's up to you to make the most appropriate choice. Because if you react because of your ego, and it leads to a detrimental situation that destroys the relationship, nobody else's fault but yours.
In your book, you talk about being challenged and why threat can actually be turned into excitement. Can you expound upon that a little bit?
Well, yes, we are. Sorry, let me just think of a good way to answer that question. As human beings, we are wired to cope with situations that are going on in our environment. So the most common reaction is driven by fighting the situation or fleeing from the situation. So anything that's out there that is negative and perhaps we don't like, we will perceive it as a threat to our existence, a threat to our being, a threat to our ego. So what we've got to do is to make the choice: do we fight, or do we flee from this threat? So, can you ask the question again, Eli? I'm very, very sorry. I just lost my thread.
Yeah, we're talking about how we can turn a threat into excitement, actually.
That's the question. Yes.
Yeah.
So if we look at a threat, we could then look at a threat as being something we can be challenged by. Now, often we can then choose to turn that threat into a situation where we can use it to turn it into excitement. Let me give you an example. Prior to coming on the motivation show, I was feeling quite anxious. I was feeling quite nervous. I was quite pleased that I was feeling that way because it was putting me physiologically and psychologically in the right place to be able to have a good conversation with you, Eli. The underlying threat is, am I going to say the wrong thing? Is Eli going to be a horrible host and I won't like interacting with him? Am I going to make myself look an absolute idiot by just talking and pontificating on things and the words aren't going to come out correctly. All of those are threats which lead to this anxiety, which leads to that nervousness. So what I've got to do is to recognize that I've got butterflies in my stomach, and it's my choice to try and make those butterflies fly in formation. Turn those butterflies into a situation where I can say, hey, I need to motivate myself. I'm going to be on the motivation show. I'm going to be with Eli. I've watched some of his videos. I've listened to some of his podcasts. He asks some great questions. Just go with the flow. And all of that then suddenly turns that threat into excitement. It doesn't go away because remember, I'm physiologically and psychologically in a place to deliver as an interviewee on the motivation show. So that's a good way of turning threat into excitement.
You know, some of the greatest actors in the world, some of the greatest speakers, even the ones you admire and think, you know, they don't have a nerve in their body, they get jitters before they start acting or before they get on the stage. And the way in which they say they overcome it is to put the focus on the people in the crowd instead of on themselves. So if they say to themselves, well, I'm here to serve them and it's about them, it's not about me, they start to relax. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. It does make very, very good sense. And again, part of what I'm doing is coming onto your show to deliver something of quality, something inspiring. But it's not for me and you, it's for your listeners out there. And only they can be the judge as to whether it's been worth their while and worth their time listening to the show. And if it does, if it is motivating for them, they'll listen to more shows. They'll seek me out. They'll seek you out more, Eli. And again, that's what I want.
In your book, you also talk about how it's probably not a great idea to stay in your comfort zone too long and not get too complacent. Tell us about why you shouldn't stay in that comfort zone.
Well, if you become too complacent, everything's very, very comfy, everything's very, very cozy. And okay, you may not feel stressed, but after a while, life becomes incredibly dull and incredibly boring, and you have limited challenges, and it develops a different type of stress. So I think the important thing is to recognize that in order to stay focused, to stay motivated, you've got to challenge yourself. You've got to push yourself out of your comfort zone and get into places where you might feel very uncomfortable. You might feel that threat that we've just been talking about and manage it and utilize it to learn and grow through it. And by so doing, you can develop your resilience.
You know, we all have heard about this phrase, life-work balance. I'm not even sure Einstein can define where it's actually where that pendulum is, you know, of work-life balance. And you actually talk about in your book a fallacy of work-life balance. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure, I think we've alluded to it earlier in the conversation because a lot of people will see work as being separate to their life. Life and work are not separate. They're not on a fulcrum with work at one end and life at the other. And you've got to get the two in balance. There are going to be times when you actually have to do a lot of work and it imposes on things that you would rather otherwise do. Family time, weekends, evenings. Sometimes you've got a deadline that you have to hit. You've got a meeting that takes you late, or you've got a conference or a training that you have to go to over a weekend, or you have to travel to a meeting overnight or over a weekend. And you've just got to incorporate that into your life. And then there are going to be other times when you should be working and the school phones up and says, oh, there's an issue there there's been a problem with your child. You're needed at the school immediately. Well, you're not going to carry on working. Oh, no, this is my work-life balance. This is me working away. You're not going to do that. So the thing is, it's not a dichotomy. It's not on and off. we've just got to bear in mind that there are going to be certain times when we have to work, and there are going to be certain times when other aspects of our life will impact and impinge upon our work. I mean, another good example that people completely overlook is that if they're ill, they take the time off work. If they have to go to the doctor, they take the time off work. If they have to go to the dentist, they take the time off work. So there's a whole host of things that happen which work and life, if we could look at the two separately, melds together. And what we've got to do is to manage them appropriately. You and I, Eli, are at the stage in life where work takes up a lot of our time. That's just the way it is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're working at the moment. I don't feel like it's work. I'm having a great time. So what is it that you're doing in terms of what is it that you're doing and what is your attitude towards your work?
Yeah. So, on that same work-life balance note, in order to get a better balance, you have to be comfortable with change. And, people like to be in their comfort zone. It's warm and fuzzy, but you need to change. And are there strategies to change correctly?
There are strategies, but I can't give you the strategies that work for everybody. There isn't a kind of one size fits all for everybody. You have to know and understand yourself. And you have to recognize that there are going to be times when you go through a situation and you sail through it very, very, very easily and very quickly. And then on another occasion, a situation will come up and you think, yeah, it's very similar to what I've experienced before. I'll sail through it, but you don't. And you don't for certain reasons. There are other factors going on in your life. You might have a sick parent that needs attending to, and that's going to impact on the situation. You might be decorating rooms at home, and that could be quite stressful. You might be having some issues with the bank. That might be quite stressful. Your children might be having some issues at school or maybe in trouble with the police, whatever it is. There's going to be certain things that are going on in your life which will compound and impact on the way in which you manage change. I think the important thing to do is to recognize that change happens. Change, it's a fairly trite statement because everybody's been saying it for years. Change is the only constant. But when you get into a situation where you're in your comfort zone, recognize it, enjoy it, make the most of it, have some fun with it, but recognize you're not going to stay in the comfort zone. Or if you do, then there's going to be challenges and you'll crave for some change. But ultimately, be the change that you want to be and affect the change and impact the change in the way in which you want it to impact upon you, recognizing that sometimes, realistically, you don't have as much choice around it as you would like.
Yeah, well said. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. So absolutely. So, we touched a little bit before you mentioned perfectionism. And I think perfectionism is a biggie because it's a reason I think why so many people never start something because you're trying to figure out how to be perfect and it's just never going to happen. So the idea is just start wherever you are. Maybe you can talk a little bit about beliefs about perfectionism and the role of optimism in everything.
Oh, sure. Perfectionism can cause us tremendous problems, and there are a number of different ways in which we can look at perfectionism. This was the work of Martin Seligman, a great professor who's done some really good research in this area. The perfectionism either comes from within. I need to make it perfect because it has to be perfect for me. That can cause some problems. There is a level of perfectionism. I need it to be perfect because I think other people will want it to be perfect. And again, that can cause different levels of problems. And this is going to be perfect because everybody is telling me the levels that they need it to be in order to be perfect. So what we've got to do is to get a balance between all three. We've got to look at our intrinsic motivation that drives us towards a level of perfectionism. And we've got to recognize that often 80% is good enough. And you're spending a lot of energy and a lot of resources on pushing it to be absolutely perfect when it doesn't need to be. By the same token, you've got to manage other people's expectations around your perfectionism, because more often than not, you can deliver something that is absolutely perfect, but it will never be good enough for the other person. You've just got to recognize that.
So excellence is good enough. Don't strive to close that extra 20% gap, which is, going to pay too big of a price.
I
and
think
you're never going to get there anyway.
Right. I think that's right. And then to go back to something that you said right at the beginning, I came across a phrase years ago and it stuck with me. And I'll give it to your listeners now, and I hope people will get some value from this. Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction.
Ooh, so I like that.
just get out, do something. At least you've given it a go. At least you've tried, and at least you can then start to make that perfect, rather than getting it absolutely perfect before you do something.
Yeah, one of my favorite expressions is better to have tried and failed than never to have tried at all, because most of us regret the things in life that we didn't try to do, then even if we failed, and those things that we just gave up on, and we look back and we're like, I didn't even try, didn't even give myself a chance. So very, very well said. Now, in closing, I'd like to learn more about your training and coaching for leaders. Tell us more about that and how people can get in touch with you.
Well, what I've been doing, Eli, and the reason why I'm on your show today is because I've developed a number of online courses based around emotional resilience and emotional intelligence. I've got about 50 of them. They have been a passion of mine over the years to actually deliver training online. And I have got 500,000 people in over 200 countries taking my courses.
Wow.
And you can find those on eiforchange.com, which is my website. One of the things I will say, Eli, and it does fit in to our conversation absolutely perfectly, is that the courses were put up 10 years ago, and I've been working on them and developing more and more courses over the time. But the first courses that went up, I look back at now and I cringe with embarrassment to think what they were like. But what I have done over the years is just to improve them. I've improved the quality of the video. I've improved the quality of my delivery. I've improved the quality of the audio. So what I'm doing is continually striving to make them the best that they can be. They will never be perfect. Why? Because I'm in them.
A little bit of modesty there. Well, the website is EI for Change. That's EI, the number 4, eiforchange.com. And our guest today has been Robin Hills. Thank you so much for being on the show, Robin.
Eli, it has been wonderful. A great conversation. Thank you so much.